Haste is going to increase the rate that you gain your energy, runes, rage, or focus back for all the melee DPS-oriented classes. Enhancement shamans and Redditins, a little bit of work to make that happen, but it'll happen. Block. I know you all love this one too. Block value goes away. Instead, blocks are going to mitigate a percentage of incoming damage, kind of like dodge, I believe, was the last conversation. And then now you can use block as a real mitigation stat, and it's not broken in one part of the game and terrible in a raid boss fight. So, prop paladins, there's hope for you somewhere over the rainbow. Stamina. It's gone. No, I'm just kidding. We're not changing anything with stamina, but basically what it means is since we threw defense out the window, we threw spell power out the window, we threw attack power out the window, got rid of some of the less needed stats, everybody's going to have more hit points. So you all get to have the same hit points as play wearers, and you don't have to complain anymore about dying on Thorum because you're not a warrior. And then the last thing I wanted to leave you all with before I hand you off to John is the next legendary coming out of our Ice Crown raid zone. I know you want Frostmourne, but it's not happening. Instead, you get Shadowmourne. Introducing the next legendary two-handed axe. It's been a while. Ragnaros' hammer's kind of played out. Enjoy. Hope you all enjoyed it. And now I'm passing it off to John LeCraft to talk about professions. Thank you, sir. What? Oh, yeah. My bad.
Little surprise for you there. All right, I'm John LeCraft. I do the professions in WoW, which some of you guys may have heard of before. And you may have heard of a new one this morning called archaeology. You're probably wondering, what's archaeology? And we're still kind of asking ourselves that to some degree, but we're getting a pretty good hold on it. First off, it's a secondary profession like cooking or fishing, which means everyone is going to get this opportunity to, pull these rare artifacts and, from the ground and experience the rich history of Azeroth, and then make their character more powerful, because that's what we do. The biggest tie-in with the artifacts, and then this is actually in the end game, is it's going to unlock the potential for your paths, the paths of the Titan, which I think Greg went over in one of his earlier. Okay, we're really not going to talk about that much then, but it gives you more flexibility in that system that you know nothing about, but it's very cool. And secondly, it's going to give you some very cool, unique rewards. Things like vanity pets. You might have a little T-Rex that's, skeleton, or you might have instant travel to a dungeon because you discovered an underground passage. Titles. You're going to get unique recipes for other professions. Basically, you're just all kinds of random cool stuff that you're finding as you're digging up the world. I got a little very rough mock-up of the archaeology journal that you're going to have. And so, as you can imagine, you're picking up all these artifacts. You don't have to put them in your bag. They're going to go in your journal. They're just going to be magically in there. And kind of the idea behind the gameplay is it's a gathering skill. Much like the other gathering skills, the world's been cracked open, and so all these artifacts that were kind of buried in the earth are just on the surface. And you need the skill to be able to recognize them, and then the skill to kind of piece these things together. So once you get enough of one type, you do this kind of deciphering thing that we haven't fully defined yet. But it could be quest-like, and it could even be something as crazy as like a kind of a mini game in your little journal. Not sure yet. Another thing, I don't think that this was even in the big slide for show, but reforging. And reforging is another way to customize your gear. And one thing I'd like to point out is is I know it's kind of daunting to think, oh, I have to enchant my thing, and I have to put gems in it, and now I have to reforge it. But reforging is going to be relatively cheap on the scale of things, so you will need someone to do it, and it's going to be given to blacksmiths, leatherworkers, tailors, jewel crafters, and engineers. And so each one of those professions gets a specific chunk of items that they get to reforge. For example, blacksmiths get to do plate and weapons, and engineers would do trinkets and ranged weapons. So, but what's the capability of this system? So the capability is you get to choose one of the stats on your item, you get to cut it in half, and then all those points you lost you can put into another stat. I can already hear you guys thinking of ways to break the system. So there are going to be some restrictions. You can't put the extra stats into something that's already on the item. So you can't just cut your stamina in half and get that as spell power or whatever. But it is going to be good for things like hit or anything else that you're just not excited about, that you want to get more of something that you are excited about on that item. And I just wanted to talk about, I'm not going to go over all the professions in detail, but I did want to cover a few other things. Another cool thing we're doing is multi-gains. And multi-gains are the ability, well, let me just give you an example. You're leveling up your trade skill and, say, blacksmithing, and you have the option to make 5 bracers, or you can make this blue breastplate. Each of those bracers gives you 1 skill up, but the blue breastplate's going to give you 5 skill ups. So it allows you to make useful stuff. And we'll probably use that on some gathering skills as well to help smooth out the progression for leveling up, which may not sound that exciting, but you probably might be leveling up with a worgen or a goblin, who knows. Another thing we're going to do with gathering is we're looking at ways to make them a little more fun, a little more exciting, and a little more compelling for their perks. So more flexibility, so if you're a miner, you don't have to be stuck with your stamina bonus. Maybe you can get something else. And lastly, I just wanted to touch on engineering.
Gone.
Engineering is a fun, really fun trade skill to work with. Never gets any complaints. Very easy to do. And now, it's one of those things that just sits on the razor's edge, where it's either amazing or it sucks, and everybody drops it, or they threaten to drop it. And if any of you are engineers and you're familiar with what we did with the last patch, we're going to be doing more of that, where it's more convenience items like Jeeves and the wormhole generator. Going to be more things like toys and pets and more gadgets with catastrophic failures, that kind of thing. Basically, kind of trying to get back to the roots of where engineering should be. It kind of took on this life of its own as we tried to make it compelling and try to make it stick to the other, or make it hold up to the other trade skills. But I think it will on its own, and it's going to have a lot of fun with it. That's pretty much my presentation. We have some other cool stuff that I don't have on the slide. We got some big changes coming to fishing that I can't talk about yet. We're going to make it more fun. How about that? Yeah, I guess with that, we'll turn it over to Q&A. If you guys even have any questions for us.
You guys need to back up.
They're already lining up.
All right, everybody. All right, I'd like to remind everybody, please keep it to just one question apiece.
That's a lot of people. I can't see anyone.
All those people aren't going to be able to answer.
Yeah, are there going to be any racial bonuses changes for the older races?
Almost certainly. We want to kind of catch them up to the newer races' level of cool.
I just want to add one thing there, and especially if you notice, things like flaying and better living through chemistry, they get the plus skill bonus, and they're also going to get, like a little sub bonus, and that's just one of the many ways that we're going to try to catch all those racials up.
Yeah.
Hi, are all of the professions going up by another 75 points? And if so, what's the new thing even going to be called, like Supermaster?
Yeah, they are going to go up by another 75 points, even though it doesn't necessarily tie in exactly. It's just a good number, and the new title will be Illustrious. So you will be the Illustrious Blacksmith.
Okay, so with the Wrath of the Lich King and we're killing Arthas and everything, why are we doing Worgen and Goblin Death Knights? Doesn't make sense.
First of all, spoiler. We talked a lot about that, and ultimately we decided it was probably just more fun to go ahead and let them be Death Knights than to prevent them from doing it just for lore reasons. It's possible that's something we might change. We haven't put a ton of thought into what it means to be a level 55 Goblin Death Knight.
Hi, I participated on the forums and Ghostcrawler, big fan.
Thanks.
My question is, DPS casters had ATS for about a day, and now there's going to be Shadowmourne, and, well, darn.
Indeed. Yeah, no, that's something that I wanted to get back around to a Castle Legendary. This expansion, couldn't really find the right place for it. I promise I'll make it up. You'll be the first ones on deck in Cataclysm, so I'll make sure you get it right out the gate. We'll get you a Castle Legendary out of, I have no idea what our first raid is actually, but there'll be one.
Hey, first off, really happy about hearing the castles are going to go to Legend Legendary finally. But my question is that with mages usually leveling, it's basically frost or nothing else. And then with PvE, it's fire or nothing else. Is there going to be, I know there's a lot of questions about getting other specs viable for raiding, but is there going to be any type of work to make other specs viable for leveling? As far as like maybe a fire that's more of a leveling build or arcane is more of a leveling build?
Yeah, that's a great question, because one of the things Cataclysm lets us do, we talked a lot this morning about how we're going to change all of the zones and quests, and that goes for the classes as well. We're going to revisit the level at which you get all of your abilities. One of the crazy things we didn't talk about, but I'll go ahead and announce it now, is that we're getting rid of ranks for all of your abilities. What that means is you'll get Frostbolt, then when you go up and gain a level, Frostbolt will be a little more powerful and a little more powerful. It can scale perfectly with character level instead of going up in these big chunks.
Hi there. Since Hunters won't be utilizing mana anymore, how will you modify talents like Careful Aim to change that? Will you be itemizing a different stat for that since intellect won't be viable?
So one of the things we're going to do, if you come to the systems panel tomorrow, we're changing talent trees quite a bit. We're going through them all. Like Tom said this morning, we want to prune some of the less interesting talents that just kind of passively boost you all around. And definitely the Hunter talent trees are going to have to change to support this new model. The Warlock talent trees will as well.
Hi there. My question is about elemental shamans. In the QA Ghostcrawler, you mentioned that elemental shamans are too much like turrets in Arena. What sort of changes do you plan on implementing for elemental shamans that we can see in the near future?
Well, we did a big one in the last patch, which was the Freedom Wolf, so you do get a little more mobility than you had before. Long term, one of the things we're talking about in Cataclysm, which I've hinted at a little bit, is maybe we get the totems to be more of, there are a couple different ways we can go, but we'd like to get the buffy totems, kind of maybe marginalize those and make totems about when you put down a totem, something cool happens. That would be one way to go. We also, there's some of this I don't want to talk about yet, but we don't want to just go to